Welcome back, everyone. So this is the second video of the two-part series about linear modeling. So this problem is still break even, but it's more about like the break even point in terms of business. So break even point in business is when your revenue and your expenses are the exact same thing. So for example, if I have a t-shirt business and I spend $200 to buy these t-shirts and then I go to sell them and I make 200 bucks, well, I broke even, right? So the goal of this is to figure out like what is the minimum amount you could do to not lose money or to not gain money. So I use this type of situation when I was debating starting my own personal training business. That's why this problem is kind of tailored to that. It's kind of what I went through. These were actually my expenses and revenue when I first started. So let me walk you through this. So you want to charge $45 per hour. Your monthly expenses are shown on the right. How many hours do you need to work a month to break even? So the first thing here is to come up with two expressions, sorry. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to put them. Let's go here and here. So we have revenue and we have expenses. All right, our expression for revenue, well, it's just 45 per hour. So that's going to be 45x or 45h, whatever you want, as long as it's 45 being multiplied by some value that we don't know. For expenses, you could do 375 plus 10 plus 60, so on, or you could just total them up. So I'm just going to total them up right away. Insert row below. Okay, total. So you should get 515. I was checking in my head, yep. So 515, which is your expenses. Now, ultimately, we want these to be equal to each other, right? So one way that you could do this just algebraically is do 45x, sorry, this is getting small over here, equals 515, and then solve for x, right? So we have this equation because this is your format right here. I'm going to highlight it. Revenue equals expenses. That's how I came up with this equation. Now, if we want to do it in Excel, we can create a table first. Hours, revenue, expenses. You know me, gotta do this. Alignment, good. Okay, I'm gonna use the autofill feature a little bit here too. So 1 and 2. Now Excel can see there's a pattern. So click and highlight both. I know it looks like the first box isn't selected, but that's a funny thing that Excel does when you are highlighting things is it looks like it's not selected, but you can see this little line along the outside showing that it is. Then hover over the bottom right corner, you should get a plus sign like this. Click and drag. We're just going to go down to about 20 hours for right now, 19 hours. Okay. And I could keep grabbing here if I wanted to go to 20. Alrighty. Now, you see my OCD kicking in. There we go. All right. So revenue. So we know revenue is 45 times the number of hours worked. So to turn Excel into a calculator, you hit the equal sign. Then type in your expression. So 45x, but in this case it's 45 being multiplied by hours, so times. And you actually can click on the hour for this row. This will allow you to use the autofill feature to fill in the rest of the table really efficiently. Click enter. And that makes sense. You work 1 hour, you get $45, right? Now I'm just going to autofill the rest. Which you can see how there's an extra 45 bucks all the way down. Now expenses, well, in this case, in my case here, expenses didn't change every month. I was just pretty fixed. This is a really basic example. So this can be a more in-depth situation, but this is just really basic. So our expenses are $515. Now, the more hours you work, the expenses don't change. Like my rent doesn't change if I work more hours in my case right now. The only something that can be argued is that miscellaneous and gas could be increased if hours increase, because more hours means you're probably making more trips to wherever you work or whatever that might entail. For me, the gym. But I just didn't want to get that detailed. So I can also use autofill here because we want 515 to stay the same no matter how many hours you work. So if you just take this 515 and use autofill, it will just use the same number over and over again because I didn't create a pattern or anything. So now we can see, okay, where do I break even? Well, right about here, we're a little bit short, really close. One more hour goes by and then I actually make a little bit more. So this whole area is kind of like the break-even point. If you wanted to figure out exactly what that is, because it looks like it's somewhere between 11 and 12 hours, just do it algebraically. So going back over here to my highlighted portion, so 45x equals 515. If we actually solve for x, I'll pull my calculator up for the visual. So, sorry, yeah, someone walked in the room and you're going to come to figure out I only do one take. So I had to pause real quick. So 45x equals 515. To solve for that, we would do, sorry, my emails keep coming through even though I have them off. 515 divided by 45. And now you can see exactly why this happened. It's about 11.4 hours is the actual break-even point. So the break-even point is 11.4 hours. I'll also highlight these so you can see it. Also, this is my biggest pet peeve because break-even point doesn't fit in column D. But if you come up between the two columns and get this cursor and double-click, it'll stretch it right out. All right. So what that means for me is I needed to work 11.4 hours in the month. Like go back, these are my monthly expenses to break even. So, I mean, let's say that's 12 hours roughly. That makes it about 3 hours per week. Well, I know that I can put in 3 hours per week. So that's actually why I made the jump, was because at least I'm going to break even. For me, it's a really big passion project, so I didn't care so much about my revenue. But this is why I decided to start my business and take that risk, because it ultimately wasn't that big of a risk. I just needed to work 3 hours per week, which could even be one client that wants to see me 3 times per week, or 2 clients that want to meet once or twice. So this is ultimately how I made my decision. We'll go into more depth with some linear modeling in the future, hopefully. But for now, let me know if you need anything. All right. So I ended up clicking pause because I realized I didn't even go through with my line graph here. So quickly, I just want to add that in. Hopefully y'all stayed around, but we'll see. So to create a visual for this, which would be a line graph, you would have a line for revenue and a line for expenses, and you would see where they intersect. Highlight all of your data, click insert. I always go to recommended charts. The first one's a scatter plot. You want the line graph that shows the 2 intersecting lines. Click that. Don't make that mistake. There we go, barely fits. All right. I'll just call it break-even point. You can see my expenses line just goes completely horizontal along 515 because it didn't change. You can see my revenue that right about between 11 and 12, it intersects, right? So anything after about 11 to 12 hours is straight profit. Profit being money you're making after you pay off your expenses. Again, if you want to dial this up, here's another way to do it. Usually there's a plus sign that shows up over here in the upper right corner, but it's not showing. So you could also go add chart element, axes titles, and add primary, vertical, and horizontal. Number of hours worked, I guess you would say. And then I don't like to say cost here because you have revenue and expenses, and cost kind of insinuates expenses. So I'm just going to say dollars or money. There you go. All right, now it's officially a wrap.